and answer some questions, as we will be jumping around to a bunch of different information. But I'll give everybody one more minute and then we'll start. All right, I think we will get started here. Thanks all for being here. My name is Stephanie Thomas. I am the Executive Director of the Search and Rescue Foundation, which is an organization that supports search and rescue volunteers through direct support, community education, and advocacy. I've been wanting to teach this class for a little while here. I think it's probably a better class to do in person, but I'm hoping that the timing of what's going on right now, that some of this information will be useful to you and your organization and you as an individual. I've been working with Laura McGladrey for the last couple of years on this stress continuum and stress resilience. And it's great information that I've been able to take back to our team. We've really been implementing this type of program for the last year. And I'm, over this time, have been working with Laura to see how we can integrate this into other parts of our community, not just with first responders. And so today I'll tell you guys a little bit about what we're doing with first responders, and then I'm turning up my volume, sorry. Get into some brain science, not too much since many of you probably already know a lot of that, and then talk about kind of the methods and take-home materials that are available today. So again, this is casual. I mean, I'm sitting at home. I have a 10-year-old who's kind of my wild card today. I'm really hoping he's upstairs doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing, but that does include making a pie. So if a fire alarm goes off, I will be walking out of this room to make sure he hasn't burned down my kitchen. And hopefully all of you are at home in a nice, safe place or in your office and willing and able to listen today. Any questions after this, I'm happy to answer. My contact information is available and easy to find. And like I said, we will kind of jump in. So I'm going to share my screen now with you. Get there. Just a moment. Volume, fine with everybody. If I've turned up my volume, but if it's too loud or too soft, just send me a text and I will, I'll fix it. All right, so here we are. Like I said, I've taken a lot of this work from Laura. She and I have been emailing back and forth over the last couple of days, just trying to get all of this kind of dialed out. But know that this is a work in progress. I am for sure not an expert in this matter. I do not have all of those initials after my name, and would love to direct anyone to someone who's more of an expert if this is something you'd like to dive more deeply into. But I know a little bit of information has helped us quite a bit, and looking forward to sharing that with you guys. So when we talk about stress, I mean, first of all, I'll say to you guys, oh, I think my sharing is paused, hold on. I feel like the first slide I really wanted to show you guys was a slide of all of the email headlines I've been getting over the last few weeks, like about how to run a Zoom meeting, how to keep people motivated, how to work while your children are running around. I mean, 7 a day minimum. I feel like they're kind of slowing down, but there's so much information out there on what you could be doing to try to reduce your stress load or to be more productive. And so writing this kind of title of this slideshow, I was laughing at myself as being another one of those people, but also know that some of the tools in this slideshow we've been using as kind of work before this even started. And so when bigger things happen in your organization, using some of these tools can help minimize the stresses that your organization feels or you as an individual can feel. So just a moment, I'm gonna jump. I think I'm still sharing right now. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. I'll jump back in a moment here. So I don't want this workshop to add more to your plate. I'm hoping that some of this stuff is going to be easy for you guys to kind of put in there, put into your daily lives, put into your work lives. And for some reason, well, there's an interruption. That's my phone. For some reason, if this is too much for you guys to integrate right now and you need to either jump off this phone call or you want me, you're saying like, hey, I'm just going to file this away and get to it later. Obviously, that's great too. I think everybody is kind of doing what they can at this moment. But here's your brain. Stress, when I talk about stress, there's kind of different categories of stress, as you guys all know. There's the kind of everyday stress that builds up over time, like what are you going to eat for breakfast and how am I going to get the kids out the door, and the dog needs to get walked and nobody did the laundry, and all those things are kind of daily stressors that on most days most people manage. Sometimes they manage them well, sometimes they've got a toolkit, they've got exercises, obviously highly recommended, meditation, they've got good friends that they blow off steam with, whatever it is, most people can manage daily stress really well. And then there's this other type of stress, which traumatic stress or big life events. In the first responder world, we talk about those a lot because traumatic stress happens more often. So in my world, it's an avalanche, or in the police department world, it's, someone needing help in some other situation. So that wasn't a good example. Fire in a building. So those stresses are big stresses, but all those daily stresses can help prepare or not prepare people for those big life events that we all have. And so there's this buildup of stress. And so what we're talking about today is how we kind of minimize those daily stressors, and we kind of take into account those bigger stressors in our lives, including right now, whether you have a job or not, whether your spouse has a job or not, whether you're on the front line, whether your neighbor is on the front line, you have whatever it is that you're dealing with right now. It could be a big stress or lots of little stresses kind of leading up. All of these things kind of impact your nervous system. So the hypothalamus is where your stress gets kind of regulated, or it comes into your brain in the back of, bottom of your brain, kind of spreads this stress juice around you. So we have the short-term stress, which people like to consider like the flight or fight, which is super useful. There's this book, I think it's called Why Zebras Don't Have Ulcers. And it talks about how zebras will eat grass and then they'll get chased by a lion and their flight or fight kicks in and they run, and then the lion's gone and they go back to eating grass. And so their kind of flight or fight response is put into play. They do their thing that they need to do to survive, and then they go back to what they were doing before. The other type of stress is kind of this long-term stress that builds up over time. And so you continue to build this ladder of stress in your system. And by doing that, your body doesn't really have the ability, unless you are working on it, unless you're exercising regularly and you're eating well and you have good relationships and all the things we know that reduce stress, those things can build up over time, which means when the big event happens, the lion chases you, you lose your job, whatever it is, your body is less able to process that stress. And so stress and the factors of stress and what that does to your body is actually a physical illness and can lead very quickly to physical illnesses. And so the trauma is that stimulus that overwhelms your capacity to integrate it. Most of the stress you're integrating, you're flushing out of your system, you're kind of in your rhythm, you've got it dialed, and then the big one comes. And if you've got a system in place, it's hard, but you can kind of regulate that and keep moving. And if you don't, that's when things can start to kind of go a little haywire. And so these are there's a lot of studies that have been done on stress injuries. These, the chronic cortisol secretion, most of this happens again with first responders, but with the lives that people are living at this moment, I mean, these things can lead to chronic cortisol secretion. If you are attempting to watch a 2-year-old and a newborn and work an 80-hour week, I mean, these things are going to happen. So increased inflammation, sleep disruption, all of these types of things. Laura likes to point out the central adiposity. So when people make fun of cops for having big bellies and like all the donuts they eat, she actually talks about how an increase in their stress levels during their day, actually it's kind of a biological function for them to gain weight around their stomachs because, they're in their fight or flight all of the time. And so it's kind of a 1-2 punch on that way, is that not only is your job stressful and maybe you're not eating that well, but the chemicals that are running through your body are also making you gain weight. So it's just all around not a good place for us to be. And we all know that there's lots of stress we can't avoid because it's just kind of the way the world works right now. So jumping into some of the things that people have seen when they are stressed, especially on that really high level of stress. But even for us, as we start kind of thinking about this in terms of how we survive stress, whether that's the fire in the building or the loss of a job, or even like how am I going to manage working with my 2-year-old, that these are some of the ways that are most likely kind of getting in there. And things that I think we all, I know personally need to think about, like busyness is one of mine for sure. When I'm stressed, I get busier. There's kind of been some studies on the 2 types of people in stressful or anxious moments, those that don't do anything and those that do everything. Definitely fall in that everything category. And that's not a good mechanism for actually dealing with the stress. I think that I can see, I'm stopping for a second because I think I can see comments if people have any, but I'm not totally sure while my video's on. I think I can still see them though. Okay, so I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Again, casual, stop here. Any questions that anybody wants me to answer on like brain science, numbing, anything else? Okay, if anybody has any while we're going through, I'm happy to share a ton more information about stress and what it does to people's bodies and those kind of numbing tools or whatever it is with you guys. And you guys have all these slides as well. Just give me 1 second here. All right, so we've gone over the kind of like stressed situation. Oh, this I thought was interesting. I was like kind of looking up some like standard stats when I told you energized or paralyzed by it. So most people, 57% of people, according to this one study, who experience stress are paralyzed by it. And then there's quite a few people, I think it's in the 40% percentile range, that are energized by stress. And that would be the people who are like super busy, or maybe they exercise too much, or maybe they cook 40 loaves of bread instead of 2. So there's lots of kind of ways in which people can hide their stress that don't seem kind of the normal, like, factors that you would see. Okay, let's do this one more time. So pre-traumatic stress management, this is really the work that Laura has been doing and has been integrating into first responder communities all over the world. And it's something that first responders, it really comes from a military background, and most of this work is based off of military work. But then she's been integrating it into the first responder world. And from there, we've taken it a step further and said, well, if first responders can use this, why can't other people use this? So the next step was avalanche forecasters or other people in that kind of outdoor stressful job industry, plow drivers on Teton Pass, whatever it is. But it also can be integrated into kind of daily life for anybody else whose job maybe isn't that stressful, or maybe is stressful in kind of a different way. And so most of what we're talking about here is kind of this pre-traumatic stress management. There's a whole bunch of stuff we can do post-stress if people are dealing with PTSD or that they're in need of therapy. Absolutely, they should seek help. They should absolutely get the help that they need. Everyone should. That is happening right now, especially if they need to talk to somebody. But today's focus is really on, okay, what can I do in my organization, and what can I do for myself so that I can keep myself in what we call in the green. And so we're going to talk a little bit about these different tools that we can use. So here's the first one, and you guys have these handout packets, and how we've used them, not just with my team, but within my staff, is we basically have said, here's our team stress continuum. So in the green, when people are in the green, they're ready to go. That's like your best self. Like, what does it look like when your team is its best self? And then as you can see, you can kind of get down the line of reacting, injured, critical. And again, this can be, we use this in my family. Like, what does my family look like? My family of 5 look like when we're in these different areas. And so this first tool, which I'm going to show you guys some examples of, can really be a great way to open a conversation within your organization about where you guys are. And maybe your team isn't ready for that. I mean, maybe there are some teams that are in that critical phase, and so this would just be too difficult to fill out. But at least then it's an awareness tool, and something that maybe you could do individually. But I think it's great to have input from the team about where you are and where you want to be. And we talk a lot about, is it possible to be in the green all the time? Probably not. We talk a lot about we like to use the word limoncello, which is somewhere between green and yellow, which is where I think as nonprofits and small business owners and parents operate, hopefully quite a bit, somewhere in between there. If we're getting into that yellow orange, and especially that orange red, then it's definitely time to think seriously about what else we need in our lives to make sure we can get ourselves back to green. And the whole idea behind this isn't that once you're in red, you're in red. It's that I'm in red, what can I do to get back to green? So we're going to go through that a little bit more. So first of all, we always talk about starting as an individual. And the only example I have that's a really good one is kind of what a general rescuer stress continuum, but this I think looks pretty good for a normal person as well. Is I encourage people to fill this out themselves first, to say, what do I look like as a person in all of these different areas? And we've asked everyone on our team and everybody on my staff and in the TIPS program, which is the Teton Interagency Peer Support Group. That's our group that we have going for 7 different first responder agencies in the Valley to support each other. We ask each other to fill these out, and you don't have to share them with anybody if you're not comfortable with that. Sometimes you need other people to help fill these out. Like, it's a great spouse activity to say, what do I look like in these areas? What do I look like when I'm stressed? Because sometimes you don't know your own stressors. So definitely something to do. But in my ideal world, something like this would sit in our office, and it's getting there. I mean, we were kind of just starting to work on this within my staff, is this sits in my office. And so we know when we start doing things, careless errors or shortcuts, non-compliant behavior, things like that, that we know that, hey, we need to kind of do an all stop right now and figure out how as a team we're going to get back to ready. That my observations matter. And as you can see, as teams get more and more injured, and excuse the language if anyone's on here, I know there's small children probably around that can read. This was an example. I can apologize for that one. But it's not my problem you've kind of passed the point where you're like, maybe you need some outside help. Maybe that's when a consultant needs to come in, or your board needs to get involved, or your staff needs to have a sit down meeting to say like, hey, we're not on mission here. We're not taking care of each other. We're not taking care of the organization. How do we get back into that green zone? Or at least the yellow and then the green. So it's, if nothing else, this is a really great awareness piece for where you are as a person and where you are as an organization. And for some people, this is life or death, right? Like you think about this in a police force, or you think about this fire stations, or you think about this at the hospital. You know, if you get into that ill area, that's when large mistakes can happen. And so these types of things are really important for organizations to keep themselves moving in the right direction. Again, yeah, so this was like, you know, the risk management. This is kind of what the team looks like. That mission drift and critical, like, why are we doing this? If multiple days in a row or weeks in a row, you're like, wait a second, this project has nothing to do with our mission, or, you know, it's time for a stop, or the calcified perspectives of like, oh, we did that 5 years ago. Why would we talk about that again? Whatever it is, those types of conversations are important to recognize so that you can start doing things to get back to that mission satisfaction, being ready to go. And I think right now, these pieces are really important because I think all of us are like reviewing our mission, reviewing our strategic plan, reviewing anything we have that is like a solid something to hold on to say like, okay, what I'm doing today is going to matter tomorrow. And it's important to have those opportunities to do that. But it's also important to know what you look like in these different areas so that you can have those conversations. Questions, anybody, before I keep going? If we were in person, I would have you guys start working on these by yourself. We're not in person, so you can do that on your own time. Some examples of life in the red. And I think that these are just, again, important for kind of individuals, but also as teams. And then examples of life in the green, which feels like kind of a breath of fresh air. And it's also things that if you're not in the green currently, or your team's not in the green, how can you start integrating some of these things, or how can you make this a goal to get there? You know, maybe your staff meeting starts with, you know, a 15-minute walk. You know, before you get on your Zoom meeting, maybe it's like everybody gets up and walks for 15 minutes. Or if you're in person, maybe it's some of those staff meetings are actually an in-person, you know, ski at the king meeting, if that's the type of group you have, or, you know, a walk or a meditation session or whatever it is. So some of these things I think are things to strive for, but we don't have them all right now. Okay, so the second part of this kind of getting yourselves and getting your teams into these, to the green, is talking about charging the battery. And like I said, the whole kind of reason where this kind of stress continuum actually started was just talking about, you know, in the military, is like making people productive and making people efficient and making people on task, which sounds, you know, a little crazy that, you know, some of this stuff came out of the military and this is what they're looking for, but they're like, if this is going to make somebody more efficient, if this is going to make somebody better at the job, then we want it. So tell us what to do. How are we going to get there? And so many teams, many first responder teams throughout the country are using these tools right now, and not because everyone on their teams are suffering from PTSD, or not because everybody on their teams, you know, are in the red. It's mostly because they want the most efficient, well-oiled machine they can get. And so when we think about it that way, we feel like, doesn't everybody want that? Not just the Denali rescue team or the Yosemite climbing rangers, but kind of everybody who's trying to kind of keep their team moving forward and motivated and excited for their mission. And so I think these tools can really be integrated throughout our lives. Okay, so the capacity snapshot, the battery check. So we have a big whiteboard in our staff, in our office, and it says what charges our battery, what depletes our battery. And whenever anyone is like having a moment, whether good or bad, they can kind of write up there on there. So, 5 weeks ago when everything's, whenever things really started changing in our community, COVID-19 quickly went up on the what depletes our battery. And, we had just started seeing the sun for the first time. So it was like sunshine days. We're definitely charging our battery. We have a great window in our office and people were psyched to see the sun. But yeah, anyway, so example here, this to me is it's kind of Laura's example, but it's really my example too. I think it's a lot of people's example of charging the battery and draining the battery. And again, this is something you can do individually, and you probably should. And then as a team, it's really easy to talk about what charges your battery as a team. I know for our team, it's seeing volunteers who are ready to respond. And so what can we do to have really ready volunteers? That charges our battery at least. What drains our batteries? For me, it's usually saying yes to too many things. And so Laura and I actually work often on the wall of no, which is like a big piece of paper in our office. Mine's just behind my computer screen of things that we should and will say no to. And sometimes you need help saying no to them. And I know there's a lot of articles out there on that, but actually writing them down and putting them behind your computer screen, I believe, is like the only way that I can integrate those things into my life. And some of these things you can't help. If you have a new baby at home, if you have a sick spouse, sleep deprivation is going to drain your battery. And I'm not saying that none of these things are going to happen, because they all overwhelm. Absolutely going to happen. Too much demand. Many organizations are dealing with way too much demand right now. And so when your battery is being drained, we have to think about those charging pieces. So if I'm dealing with overwhelmed and too much demand, and I'm feeling isolated because I haven't seen my best buddies in a while, then what do I need to do to charge that battery back up? It might mean more connection with friends, over meetings or isolated walk or whatever it is. It might need to be a gratitude journal. It might need to do something to charge that battery if you are dealing with all of those drained, if those batteries are getting drained, because they are. Everyone every day is going to deal with things that drain our battery. We just have to know how to complement them. Questions on this one? I've been talking a long time. Still pretending like I'd see the questions, but I don't think I have any. All right. All right, so this is a patrol team. And so they, like I said, this has mostly been work with first responders, and Laura works a lot with SAR teams and patrollers and things like that. And so this is kind of easy stuff for them to do and kind of put up on their wall. And so they can look at it and know like, hey, we're dealing with like 3 battery drainers right now. What do we need to do tomorrow morning or this afternoon or whatever to get ourselves back on track? And sometimes that can come from leadership, for sure. The pizza delivery, if your team is really stressed out, like what can you do as a leader to charge people's batteries? And sometimes it can come from the team as a group. This doesn't have to be a top-down thing, like only the leaders know how to charge batteries. This can definitely be an all organization event, and kind of needs to be, because I mean, what we've seen in a lot of organizations when I've been doing this work over the last couple of years, some of that battery draining can definitely come from the top. And some of that, you know, teams in the red is because of some leadership issues. And so as teammates, coworkers, whoever you are, it's important for you guys to understand your organization and really kind of where the issues lie and what we can do outside of the things we can't control. Green choices. So we're going to kind of get into this a little bit. Like I said, we're really working on kind of 3 different pieces of getting yourself into a place that you're lowering your stress, you're becoming more efficient, you're becoming more effective, and you're able to recognize some of the things that are kind of putting you with the edge. So maybe all of these tools are useful for you. Maybe it's good to pick one of them, but these are just kind of more examples of, you know, when you're in it, what can help you. So committed to sleep, exercise, a plan is really important. Planning for these kind of moments. I know for some people, their entire office working at home was like the most stressful thing they could ever imagine because their office isn't set up for something like that. And for other people, it was a walk in the park. They had a plan. Like if their building wasn't available the next day, they were like, oh, I got everything on my laptop, everything's saved to the cloud, everyone's got a pair of headphones. I only need to go to the office to pick up checks to print on my home computer. So in the future, it's nice to think about how we can have some of those plans, maybe not just for the office, but for other things. A big event gets canceled, or you know, someone in your office is seriously ill and isn't able to do their job for a few weeks. Whatever it is, those plans can really be helpful. Talked a little bit about green leadership. I know many of you are probably leaders yourselves in your organizations or in your households or whatever, wherever you are leaders. And these are just some of the examples we have to kind of move in that direction. So I think number 1 is trending towards green yourself. And we talk about that a lot in our search and rescue group, that people are looking at leadership to act this way. It's sort of like you hear those comments about the boss that never takes a day off, but tells other people to take a day off, and they're trying to wonder, like, should I take a day off? Because I've never seen you take a day off. Or if you have a company policy that you don't answer emails after 7 p.m., but someone in your office always is, it's not really showing that kind of trending towards green attitude. Hiring green people, I think that's actually really interesting to me, is like, what can you do with interview questions to hire people that bring kind of that positivity and that self-efficacy and like all the elements of kind of green-minded people to your organization when you're looking to hire new people, and not just looking for like specific skills, but what else are you looking for to kind of add to your organization? So this is kind of the third piece of the puzzle that we talk about, is green choices. And these are just really your tools to keep you in the green. And so that first, I'll go back really quick. This is really what we work on kind of the most, because this kind of shows us, oh shoot, we're in reacting or injured or critical or whatever it is. But all these other things, the charging the battery, and then green choices, are really ways in which to get you and your team into that green zone. And so as an individual, those top columns, health, at work, outside of work, relationships, those can really be kind of anything that you're choosing to work on for your green choices as an individual. But honestly, for me, the most important part of this is understanding what my survival tools are. And so if you can't, if you're not at the place yet where you know what you do when you're not in the green, it's hard to identify what you look like when you are in the green, if that makes sense. So again, example from Laura of like, if you know your survival tools, then you can know what you can do to combat them. You can change these up as an individual. You can decide that you're going to focus on different things, but these are just some good ways. And you guys have some blank sheets that you can use. This is also great to do with kids, just to talk to them about what they do. So like my 10-year-old who I talked about, his survival tool when he's bored is he asks for more iPad time, which he knows infuriates me. But I know it's for him is like, he's not in a green space. He probably hasn't exercised enough that day. Maybe he was making some poor choices about food, whatever it is. But if he gets to the point where he's whining about his iPad, we talk about, okay, what are some green choices we can make right now? Can you read your book, or can you head outside and jump on the trampoline? Other things like that. So this has been really a nice parenting tool for my older child. And then your team. This is, again, what you guys look like when you're green. Like, what do you look like in your specific areas of your work? Training, mission, practices, connection, all sorts of things. You can label those whatever you want across the top. Maybe it's just, your mission statement broken out. Maybe it's kind of your internal practices as an organization. Whatever it is, being able as a team to kind of list those out so that we know, okay, we're going to bring in an expert over the next 6 months to train us on whatever it is, so that, we're able to operate at the level we want to. Or connection wise, we're going to do Zoom happy hours on Wednesdays at 4 until this is over, and we're not going to talk about work at 4. We're going to laugh about the kids' art projects, or, the fact, that you missed your grandfather's birthday party and you're pretty sad. Whatever it is, you're going to connect with people like you used to do in the office. So this can be short term and it can be longer term. So you can even be integrated into your goals for your organization as you're making kind of work plans or doing your OKRs or whatever it is. These are ways in which you guys can connect as a team. I'm going to stop there for a minute and ask you guys if anybody has any questions, want me to go back to anything. The rest of what I have today is really more examples, these kind of individualized resiliency plans. It's really just work that you guys can do to kind of build yourself up into those green plans. And there's lots of articles and lots of information out there. These are just kind of one piece that kind of Laura's worked on. Within the resource guide, I've given you guys a number of different kind of materials that you can use to build your own plans. But yeah, I'm not going to go through these next 10 slides because they're mostly like examples of how you can work on some of these things yourself. The other thing I was going to mention, find it really quick, which I talked a couple of other ideas. At SAR, we have these things, they're not really called battle buddies, but I think that's from the military again. It's basically a group of people at work, depending on how large your organization is, that you check in on. And so I have a couple people at SAR that are in my group. There's 2 other people. We text each other, we check in on each other about work and home and life. And, honestly, what we really do is we make sure people get home after a search and rescue mission. And so that's how it started, was, hey, let's, after everybody goes home, after the debrief, let's just connect with each other to make sure we got home okay. And if there's something else you missed when you got there. But it's also something that you can do, I think, with your organization right now to keep connected with people. Stressful days, or they're struggling with something else at home outside of work. Maybe there's 1 or 2 people you connect with. The other things we talk about often are like the kind of characteristics of resilient people and how that can help us be greener in life. So there's lots of different articles on this. Some ones we talk about are how strong are your interpersonal relationships? Are you able to cultivate self-awareness? Do you have active optimism for life? Do you trust your gut? Are you persistent? Those types of things are part of those slides that I didn't show you guys right now, are just ways to say like, okay, what are my goals for myself, but also for my team? And I think that's really important. Like if your team is actively optimistic, then things usually have a better outcome than if it's the other way around. All right, I'm going to stop there. Anything you guys want me to go over or have questions about or go back to, you're welcome to chat it in right now. Otherwise, we don't have to have this conversation anymore. The one other thing I was going to tell you guys, so TIPS, like I said earlier, is our Teton Interagency Peer Support Group. And this is an agency, this is a group of 7 different first responder groups in the Valley that came together about 1.5 years ago. Basically, organizations came together and said, how can we support each other better? How can we do some of this pre-work to make sure our organization has the tools that they need so that, you know, we can kind of get each other in green spots. And so this group of people, there are representatives from a number of different people throughout their organizations, come together monthly to talk about our groups and what we can do and kind of that pre-work, but also, you know, how we are responding to each other in times of crisis. So we do respond to crisis times. We do offer therapy for first responders. We do offer classes and free Headspace accounts and all sorts of other things to keep people in the green. But it is a group that has quite a bit of information, and I also know that they're willing to share that with others. And so if this is resonating with you or you believe it would be with your group, myself or somebody from that TIPS group could also do kind of give you some additional information or work for your organization to not create a TIPS team, but maybe use some of the information that we have from that group to better support each other. I got a message asking if we could use this slide bank for our work groups. Yep, go for it. Laura has just asked, most of these, I mean, I think all of these slides I put in here today are hers, and she's just said, you know, you can credit her, that's great. Lots of resources on her website, Responder Alliance, and many of these things that you guys can kind of tailor to meet your group, your work group. Real quick, I'll show you guys the slides, and then if there's no more questions, then we'll get out of here. Hold on one second. Okay, so like I said, I gave you guys these kind of blank, well, maybe let me show those to you. Stop share. There, no, that's not it. You guys get to watch me like zoom around on my computer here for a minute. Okay, so these are the blank sheets that you guys are more than welcome to use. If you need different ones, let me know, but I felt like these were the examples that I find the most useful. A couple other things. This, get out of there, escape. Sorry, trying here. This is actually the signs and symptoms of stress reactions. This is a handout that I decided to share with you guys in case you or other people that you know or are working with are dealing with some kind of more serious stress reactions, whether that's from what's going on or, you know, personal life or whatever it is. And so these are just some of these things that you can kind of have on hand to help with kind of those kind of more serious situations that you have going on. If you wind up in those situations yourself, lots of space for help in this community, that's for sure. I'll also say that these stress resilience work resources right here. So this Outside Online article, it was just published a couple days ago. It's Laura's work with the American Mountain Guides Association. So some stuff that we covered, but some other really great stuff in there. Responder Alliance is Laura's website. These first 4 are a podcast with Laura talking mostly about responder stress and patient stress, but interesting stuff. And then a couple other ones that I know have been shared quite a bit recently, but if you need another podcast, most people probably don't, those are there for you to use. I think I saw, let's see. So best way to apply this to children. So I run this, so I have a 3, 4, and 10-year-old at home. And so basically part of my, our dinner plan sometimes on Sunday night includes our kind of family meeting. And so we talk about ways in which we as a family are acting towards each other. So we'll say things like, hey, you didn't use please when you were asking for your fork, and is that a green choice right now? Or are we like, hey, it looks like we're, yelling at each other a lot. Like maybe we need to sit down and kind of look at our chart again. And so it's pretty simple in our family. If you were looking at it for more of a staff situation, I think it's just like anybody else's company. Like what happens to your staff at your childcare when things are not going well versus are going well? What do you look like as individuals? What do you look like as a group? But I think with kids in particular, it's just kind of talking about the language, just like all the other language that we're working on with children to talk about their emotions and feel their emotions or label them or whatever, wherever else they are at their age level. I think it's good for families. I think for us, this charging the battery versus draining the battery is the most important thing we do in our family right now. Because I'll say like, okay, we've spent too much time in front of the TV. That's a battery drainer. And we haven't been making good, healthy food choices. So we're going to all get outside. We're all going to go for a hike. And, tonight for dinner, we're all going to, make sure we make healthy choices at dinner. And so that's, for me, kind of the easier one with kids. And then with my spouse, some of those other things are really interesting to identify with each other, especially things that we know we do, we don't know we do when we're stressed, but our loved ones tend to call out on us. So yeah, I hope that answered your question about kids or childcare. And if not, I'm happy to talk to you more about that later. Not that I have all the answers, like I said. Laura does work with kids, and so part of her work is with kids in trauma. And so I know she has integrated quite a bit of this language within the groups that she's working with as well. All right. It doesn't look like we have any more questions right now. You guys all know how to get in touch with me. I'll actually type my email into the chat right now. I'm easy to find. And I'm hoping that you guys get something out of this, even if it's just one piece or for yourself, for your kids, but happy to answer any additional questions and know that we're kind of like all working on this. This has been something that the search and rescue team has been implementing for a while now, and we're still working on it for sure. Actually, one more thing, something that we do as a big group, which if any of you are in a big group, when we have our meetings, like our monthly meetings, we actually ask people to personally put in a color chip of where they are that day. So red, yellow, green, orange. And so they put it into a big jar. It's totally anonymous. And then we make a grid out of it. And so we can get a really good sense of where the team is as a whole, and maybe calls out to people like, oh, hey, half our team is really in the orange. Like, maybe we need to address that before we get into like the logistics of knot tying. And so doing kind of a check-in with your group in that way, I mean, whether it's, I mean, I think it's helpful to be anonymous so that if people aren't ready to talk, they aren't, but maybe even just doing that kind of snapshot with your coworkers, or if you have a larger group of people, is a good way to read your team so that you know where you're at before you jump into something that maybe is going to be hard or taxing or drain a lot of people's batteries. So I'm happy to send an example of what that grid looks like. It's literally small pieces of construction paper. You know, when you walk in the door, you throw them in a hat. Somebody takes them out and glues them on or tapes them on a piece of paper. But little things like that, I think, can help integrate the language, but it also can kind of give you a snapshot of where your organization is at. All right, thank you guys so much. I hope you guys have a great rest of your sunny afternoon. Thanks for spending an hour of it with me, and let me know if you have any more questions.